Hello, everyone. Tonight, my guest is Isaac Morehouse, who's the CEO of Crash. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, I wanted to talk to you because obviously student debt is a big question right now. There's a lot of questions about the job market, especially because of COVID and young people. And there's been sort of this emergence of the gig economy and moving away from traditional school, a lot of reasons because people can't pay for it. So, just to start out, how did you get involved in alternative education resources and create your own company?
Yeah, so there's there's a lot of versions of the story. I'll try not to give the really long one, but it really started in my own college experience back in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002. I was, paying my way through school, working my way through and paying my way through, and just I was learning a ton on the job. And I wasn't learning anything in college. I mean, it was just ridiculous, and the amount of money I'm paying. And I remember being really frustrated. And I just thought, man, there's no connection between what's valuable in the marketplace and what I'm paying for at school. Like, why am I going here? And it took me a
Right.
while to understand, several years into my career, that people are really buying the piece of paper. They're buying the credential. They're not buying the educational experience. They don't, because they're not really getting one. And if they wanted to learn stuff, you could go sit in on college classes for free. But people are paying because they want that piece of paper because they
Right.
think it's going to signal to companies that there's somebody worth hiring. And I kind of had this realization after the 2008 financial crash. All these college students, I was working with them at my current job at the time, helping them, with their careers and things. They were struggling to get hired. And meanwhile, all these business owners I was talking to were saying, I'm always hiring. I just can't find good help. And
Right.
I knew some of these students were smart, but they were not coming across that way on the job market. They weren't coming across as somebody worth paying attention to because they're all just blasting out these resumes that just list degrees, GPAs, just, it's like there's no way to connect that. So my kind of initial epiphany was that what's necessary to really go from, student to employed to having a career is something that signals the ability that you have in a way that's more powerful than just relying on a degree because they mean almost nothing now. Like, what does it mean if you have a degree in
Right.
communications? What
Right.
am I supposed to say? Oh, wow, I'm looking for someone with those skills. Like, what skills does that supposed to signal to me? So I started Praxis, my first company, in 2013, which was a college alternative, still going strong. And then out of that, Crash spun out about 2 years ago. So
And one of the things I looked at on your website was it's not that people with degrees can't use what you're doing, but a lot of times it seems like they don't know how to build resumes or they don't know how to build work portfolios. Has that been what you found as well? That even though they have degrees, they don't even know how to market themselves?
yeah, absolutely. That's what's great about, Crash is we exist to help you win the job hunt. And it doesn't matter if you have a degree or not, right? Like the original insight came when we saw helping people with no college degrees and
Mhm.
zero experience. They were winning jobs that said on the job posting 2 to 3 years experience and bachelor's degree required. 19-year-olds with neither of those things were getting these jobs. And they were getting it because they were putting together like pitches and projects and sending something unique. And so that insight led to Crash. We thought, hey, we can help millions of people do this. Win the job hunt by kind of treating it differently, changing their mindset. And so that's the whole thing is like whether you have a degree or not, you can't expect it to do the work for you. It's not going to
Right.
do any heavy lifting. No matter how many degrees or your GPA or how nicely formatted your resume, no one's going to hire you for that. You're not going to send out. I like to tell people it's kind of like dating, right? Like if you go out on the dating market and you go to, some bar or some place and you start handing out one pagers that describe the attributes, the reasons that you're dateable. Here are some bullet points about how dateable I am. No one's going to be like, oh my gosh, this
Right.
person's amazing. Let's go on a date. Right. Like, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how people approach the job hunt. Just blast out resumes. And if my resume is good and the formatting is nice and the bullet points are quality, I'll win a job. And it's like you and 250 other people applied for that job. None of you are, like it's a crapshoot, right? That's not going to do the work for you. So yeah, we're trying to kind of shift that mindset into how can you find something of genuine value to a company and signal that to them in a unique way. Don't send a resume, burn your resume, send something better.
And have there been any colleges or any programs within college that you've found to be sufficient in helping kids get ready for jobs? Because I've graduated high school pretty recently. I'm in college now, and I know that there's no job application program prep like there was for the SATs or the ACTs. It doesn't seem to be going hand in hand. Everything is still very focused on the tests or the papers. Have you found that gap to be existent in colleges?
You know, I mean, it varies dramatically. Like there's always a couple professors hidden away at different places that
Mhm.
are better than others at trying to help connect what's happening there to what's going to be value in the marketplace. There are certainly different programs and majors that are better than others. I mean, some careers legally require you to have a degree, right? Like if you want to be a
Right.
lawyer or whatever, for example. So obviously, getting a degree there is going to help your career prospects. Now, again, no one's going to hire you just because you have the
Right.
degree, but um, in terms of like career services and stuff, I got to be honest. I mean, I've looked, I've talked to probably hundreds of university career service places, and I mean, like they just they mean well, right? Like
Yeah.
they want to help, but they have no incentive to do so. They
Right.
don't suffer at all if you don't get a job. No matter what happens after you leave college, they've got the money and no one's blaming them. Like if you don't go to college and you struggle in life and you don't get hired, people in your life will tell you you should have gone to college. If you
Right.
go to college and you struggle and you don't get hired, no one will say shouldn't have gone to college, that ruined it, right? No one will blame
Right.
college. So there's no incentive. It's very, very hard, no matter how good your intentions. If you face bad incentives, you're probably not going to have very good outcomes. So, like these career services centers, it just doesn't matter if what they're doing is irrelevant. It doesn't hurt them. They don't lose funding. They don't lose budgets. You know, they don't lose prestige. So I don't. I mean, there are pockets here and there. Certainly, certain programs, certain schools are better than others. But by and large, I would tell people this: whatever resources are available to you, you can turn it into something that helps you get a
Right.
job. You have to be the one that says, no one's going to hand me a job. And if I follow, no matter what rules I follow and what boxes I check, I'm not going to get a job for that. It's up to me to go out and win a job. And whatever resources I have, if you've got a degree as a part of the mix, use it. If you've got access
Right.
to resources at a college, use them. If you don't, find something else. But like, you got to take charge and realize jobs aren't being handed out along with degrees.
And have you found that there's a difference between I've seen some of your videos you talked about people who come from Harvard are still struggling with even how to do formatting for their resume or trying to figure out how to set themselves apart. Is there a difference between people from Ivy League colleges or bigger schools and smaller colleges and universities? Or are they all sort of having the same issues with the basic skills of applying to jobs and then following through in that application process?
Yeah, it's funny. Uh, the issues are exactly the same. The playing field might be different, right?
Right.
So, like if you went to an Ivy League, the expectation is you're going to apply for a job at Goldman Sachs or whatever, right? If you go to, like I did, big generic state university, the expectation is something much, a less prestigious company. So, where you're applying changes, and maybe like you may have a different network of
Mhm.
people, but the applications itself, they pretty much suck across the board.
Right.
I'm telling you, very few students, like, especially there's something weird that happens if you go to a more prestigious school. You tend to believe that the school is going to do more. Like if you go to a really like low ranked school, you tend to have less confidence that people are going to hire you just because of
Right.
the degree. So it helps you realize quicker in some cases, I got to do something else. I got to stand out
Right.
in a different way.
Right.
You're like, hey, I got an Ivy League degree. I'm good to go. Right. It's not necessarily the case. I mean, I was just talking to a bunch of students from Stanford, um, and they're like freaking out because they can't even get internships, and because they're kind of like waiting around. They're kind of like, well, I go to Stanford, I'll just get internships thrown at me, right? And that's not the case. And they kind
Right.
of don't know what to do because they sort of believed that the school would do the work for them. And so I'm just telling them, like, go out there. Like, what is it that you do well that you can do that's valuable to somebody? Go find a company that's interesting to you, show them, demonstrate to them. Don't show them your degree. Show them a project you built.
Right.
Send them a video where you say, hey, I love what you do. Here's 3 things I would love to do for you this summer in an internship. Let me, it'll blow them away because nobody does that. Nobody does that. So you really can stand out easily. I mean, here's one of the good things, because most students are like really not doing the job hunt well. If you do, you'll stand out like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. We have people on Crash sending these video pitches. They get an 80% response rate to those pitches. 80%. The typical job application has less than 1% response rate. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. And for people who are, like you're saying, they go to lesser schools or they go to schools that don't necessarily prepare them, so they're a little more engaged with the process. Have you found that there's one area in the job application process or the job looking process that people tend to be weaker in overall across the board, depending on what school you go to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would probably say the biggest area that people struggle on is just taking the step of sending something different. So there's kind of 2 things that it's hard to get people to do. And I would say one, they're both hard, but one is the harder. The first is to stop mindlessly scanning jobs boards for just roles and companies that you don't know anything about them. You have no interest or connection. You just feel like I got to apply to everything, right? So start looking at a smaller number of companies, 5 or 10 companies that genuinely interest you, that get you excited. Research them, dive deep into them. Okay. So that's the first thing. A lot of people are just like, never heard of it. I don't even know how to pronounce the name of the company. I'm going to apply because it looks like the salary's right and the title says something that sounds familiar to me, right? So getting people to stop doing that and to do a little bit of research. But that's not as hard because a lot of people are willing to, okay, I'll go do some research. I want to find a company that I love. I'll do that. The harder part is once you've found a company that you love, it's easy to get stuck in preparation mode, like perpetually. Well, I'm going to just keep researching them. And then I'm going to keep tweaking, like, well, maybe I'll send them something, an email, and just being afraid to click send because you want it to be perfect.
Right.
And just getting over that fear, like, yeah, you want to take the time and get to know something about them and deep dive, but you can't be so precious because here's what helps people get over that. Whatever you send somebody first, like say you find a company you love and you're like, this is awesome. I'm going to put together a little 1-minute video where I introduce myself and I'm going to share a link to a blog post I wrote about why I love their product, right? Which is a killer thing to do. You're going to get really good response if you do that. I'm going to find the email address of the hiring manager. I'm not just going to click apply. I'm going to email them directly. You're all ready to do that, but you're afraid to send it because you don't know the video is not perfect. I stuttered, whatever. Like that's where people get hung up and they shouldn't, because whatever you send first, the only job of that thing is to get them to want to know more. That's it. It's not going to get you the job. It's going to get them to say, oh, wow, well, I should probably talk to this person. Right. And so if you can send something that makes them want to know more, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing ever. No one's going to hire you from it. But if they see it, and they remember it and they say, whoa, that's different. Everybody else sent me a resume. This person sent me this little video and said, hey, check it out. I wrote this blog post about why I love your product and I would absolutely love the chance to talk to you. You remember that and you want to talk to the person. So I think just hitting send, not getting stuck in like endless perfectionism mode.
And do people tend to think that it's one and done a lot, that you send out one resume or you send out one pitch video and they're going to get the job? Because I know that that's a complaint of a lot of parents right now, that people think, oh, you send in one thing and you get everything that you want.
Yeah, it's definitely, we always tell people you have to treat it like a sales process. And most people don't know much about sales. And, the word sounds icky to most people. But if you do sales for any kind of company, there's this whole process. You identify a prospect, someone that you think would be interested in your services, right? You do some research on them. You figure out what's going to be the best thing to send them. And then you have like a sequence of contacts, right? You send them something initially. If you don't hear back after 3 or 4 days, you send them a follow-up. Hey, hoping you got a chance to look at that thing. Let me know, right? If you do hear back and they say, hey, this is pretty cool. Maybe we should, whatever, talk a little more, right? You follow up after that. If you get an interview, even after the interview, you immediately send a thank you follow-up, right? Like there should be like 7 or 8 touches, right? 7 or 8 contacts going back and forth. And I've had so many people look, remember, companies are, even the greatest companies, they're run by people. So they're disorganized. Sometimes they forget things, they mess up. If you don't hear back, it doesn't mean that they hate you and you didn't get the job. In fact,
Right.
you have no idea what it means. Until they tell you no, go away, you should assume that they just haven't had a chance to look at it yet or it got lost, right? And that's the case so many times. I've had so many people, not hear back, and they keep following up 6 or 7 times. And then finally they're like, oh my gosh, I kept meaning to do this. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's do an interview. Or I've even had people apply, send something, get an interview, and have the person say, hey, you're just not quite the right fit for this role. We had to go with somebody else, but we really liked you. Sorry. They responded, all right, that's great, but I'm not going to take no for an answer. Let me prove to you that I can do a different job at the company, blah, blah, blah. And they got hired, right? Like even that sometimes, because companies don't know exactly what they need for any given job. You're always taking a chance. Again, just like dating, right? You can make your list of desirable attributes, or if you're looking for an apartment or a house, oh, I want all of these things, but you're almost never going to find something that has all of them. And sometimes it turns out, oh, I didn't think I cared about a porch and I really wanted an extra bedroom, but I found this amazing place with one bedroom, but it does have a porch. Maybe I will go that way. It's like that when companies are hiring. They may think they need one thing, but if you show them something else, they might say, man, she doesn't really have exactly what we thought we needed, but she has
Right.
something else that's really valuable. I don't want to let this slip away, right? So being persistent and following up and not just assuming, well, I sent it out, I didn't hear back, tough luck, and saying it, well, it's
Yeah.
out of my control. It's the market, it's the economy. No, it's always in your control. Keep pushing and take charge.
Yeah. And you mentioned sometimes companies don't know what they're looking for. I saw on the crash site that the Discover quiz and all of the different section guides. On the Discover quiz, it gives you suggestions on what you may be good at and the type of, I would say, worker you might be. What was the thinking behind just creating that? And do you find that there are certain people who don't know what type of leader they might be or don't know what type of area they might fit into and that holds them back in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, all of us are constantly trying to gain more self-knowledge. None of us really know exactly, like, what am I best at? What am I going to do when I grow up? I don't know, but I'm always trying to move closer to it. Right.
Right.
So, and anybody can go take this quiz, by the way, crash.co/discover. It's free. So we spent a lot of time putting that together. We researched and studied all kinds of different personality tests and career tests and whatever. And we were like, how can we boil down into the smallest, number of questions possible, something that doesn't pretend to tell you, here's what you should do. I remember my brother took one of those career assessments that told him he
Yeah.
should be a jeweler. It's like just super weird, randomly specific. But instead to just say, hey, look, people with these types of attributes and traits that you have, they tend to do well in these types of roles and they tend to struggle in these types of roles. So if you're, if you go through and take the test and you come out, your personality type, like mine is a hunter, it would say, hey, you tend to do well in roles that are like sales or marketing. You tend to struggle in highly detail oriented roles like design or software engineering. So if you're going to go into those roles, be aware that's going to
Right.
be a struggle for your personality, right? And it's kind of to start you directionally into, and these are very big buckets, right? Like sales, marketing, design, operations. But more than finding your ideal role or career or job title, which a lot of young people are like looking for job titles, which is meaningless, right? Like you don't
Yes.
know yet. We always try to say just avoid the things that you're bad at, that you suck at, or that you hate, right? Things that are a bad fit, stay away from those. So once you realize, like for me, I'm not going to go be an accountant, right? Like that's not my thing. It's going to make me unhappy and I'm not very good at that kind of thing. So if I know that, everything else is kind of fair game, and kind of seeing it that way. Like the goal is just to narrow the field enough. It's not to pick the one thing. It's to eliminate the stuff that's not a fit and kind of look in those broader buckets, especially early on, because it's going to take trial and error to learn little by little, what your real sweet spot is.
And I saw it does take trial and error, and that's why one of the things that stood out to me on the site was your job interview guide, and it had different areas about prep and how to follow through with it. How did you develop that guide? Because it is very comprehensive. It's quite long. It's got different sections. Was that done through people who have been through the Crash program or have used Crash before?
Yeah. So all of the guides that we have on there, these are kind of like learnings from the trenches. So it started with my first company, Praxis, which, have helped hundreds of people, training in this boot camp and then placing them in careers. And so helping hundreds and hundreds of students apply to jobs, go through the interview process, go through the follow-up process. Cause it was, that's what Praxis does. It places you in a job at the end of the program.
Right.
And then, we launched Crash out of that. And now we've worked with thousands of people on just the job hunt, right? We don't do any training or any boot camps with Crash, but it's just helping you on that job hunt and seeing it. And I've been on both sides of interviews, hundreds, if not, I don't know, several hundred, maybe 1,000. And so seeing the simple, just really simple things that people tend to get hung up on and the things that can help you overcome those. And the key to all of this is it's not, it's like trying to tell somebody like how to make good art, right? You can't tell them the positive creative part. You can't say this is what it should look like because everyone's going to have something unique and you want them to bring that uniqueness. What you can say is, here are the things that tend to be pitfalls that people tend to follow, get stuck on, right? Like being too worried about perfection or forgetting to follow up or whatever. So that's really emerged out of hundreds or thousands of interviews, as well as interviews with hiring managers. So we've gone out and talked to hundreds of hiring managers over the years of like, what are you looking for? What do you see? Like even after they interview somebody, hey, do you mind if tell me a little bit how they did? What would you have liked to seen from that? And that kind of all went into those guides that we put together.
And just sort of in closing, because we are still living in the COVID economy in many, many ways, as are other countries, there have been a lot of people who are saying the job market has gotten more competitive because of COVID, especially for people who are entering the workforce, or less competitive because less people can go out. What has been your finding there? Are young people at more of a disadvantage now, or are they having more success because less people can interact in person?
Yeah, there are fewer companies hiring, and those who are hiring are getting inundated with more applications. So in that sense, you could say it's a more competitive job market for the seeker. Mm-hmm. However, here's what I've noticed. For people who are approaching this differently, kind of the Crash approach, I guess, they're having no more difficult of a time, maybe a slightly easier time, because the market is more flooded than ever with people who are just like, I need a job. I'm just going to click apply everywhere. Companies they have more applications per open role than ever. Those who do something different, they stand out even more. Right. And those who are already thinking about, they're already comfortable sending a video pitch. Well, if this is going to be a remote job done over Zoom, and I've already seen you'd send me a 2-minute video, right? Like you're kind of, it's like you can kind of fast track it even a little bit more by recognizing the moment that we're in. So I would say challenges, yes, but every brick wall to somebody else is an opportunity for you, right? Because it's like, well, if I can get over it, I'm going to have less competition on the other side. So I think now is the best time to aggressively go out there and look for jobs. And don't play the game of, well, I'm just the victim of larger forces in the world. Right. The economy, it's not my fault, right? It's the economy's just take ownership and say, I don't care what's going on in the world. I control me, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to fight and I'm going to find something awesome. And when you do, it tends to work.
And have you seen more smaller companies starting up now? Have you seen more people trying to branch out on their own? Or is it people really looking for dependability of a larger corporation or company?
No, that's a great point, a great insight. Yes, a lot of small startups. And I would say that, by the way, the best first job in your career, to me, go find a company that's less than 100 people, 10 to 100 people. That's a startup. You're going to have incredible experience. And even if you're there for a year or two, you're going to be able to take that anywhere. Like, to me, you can always go get a corporate job, but it's less fun and you learn less. So a lot of new startups where the larger companies are struggling, a lot of newer, smaller, lean, nimble startups are actually doing really well and finding niches. Right. And then a lot of, like you said, kind of the line between a company and a freelancer is kind of blurring. So it's like, a couple of friends who are like working together and doing some gigs over here, and they kind of have a company or an agency or whatever. There's a lot more of that. And so the opportunity to kind of to say, look, I don't need to worry about, like, I've even seen people doing this on the job hunt during COVID. I'm not going to go and apply for a job with a company because the company they don't know what's going to happen to
Right.
because they're getting hit hard. Instead, I'm going to go say, let me perform this task for you for the next 6 months. Let me get a 6-month contract. And then nobody's obligated after that. And I've seen people piece together some really amazing experiences by kind of approaching it that way, like things down into smaller chunks of sort of gigs or contracts. So yeah, I think more opportunity than ever in that direction.
Perfect. Then it's not hopeless then, I guess. Where can
It's not
people
hopeless
follow
at
you?
all. I mean, look, you've got a YouTube channel you're putting, so you're already ahead of the game. You know what I mean? You know how to market yourself.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. Where can people follow you on social media to keep up with your work and to keep up with what you're saying about education?
Yeah, probably the best is Twitter, and it's just at Isaac Morehouse.
Perfect. And where can people go to look at Crash and to figure out if they could be part of the process?
Yeah, go to crash.co. If you are on the job hunt or anybody you know is on the job hunt, go to crash.co. You will definitely get hired faster.
Perfect. And we'll link all that below. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Have a great day.